Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening at this very important conversation about elections in Haiti, but mostly about implication. And that brought me to the first time in the 1815 when Simon Bolivar and visited Haiti to have some knowledge about the Haitian Revolution and also like I'm not gonna use the word lesson, but also learn about how did we make it. And that was like this moment helped us remind us all the time where Haiti come from, but also like how we used to position ourselves in the Caribbean or the Americas or in the world in general. And I think this conversation also today, even it's about Haiti, it will be a little bit hard to not talk about the Haitian situation, but also we'll try to our best to keep it about like on the geopolitical side to see what this election could mean beyond Haitian borders. And a few information. We decided at the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at Indiana University, which hosted this conversation, so prioritize the meeting format. No webinar because we wanted to have an interactive conversation. But also we know that we are aware that sometimes that it might be very difficult to manage that because we have to remind, could you turn off your camera? Could you turn off your audio? But I have faith we're not gonna have that today. And I usually work by faith, and I have faith that not gonna happen today and everyone will do our best to keep our camera and off and when it's time to talk and also you can raise your hand and share your questions and the the agenda for today we're gonna have a short presentation, a briefing from our speakers that I'm going to introduce in a few minutes. And after that, we're going to have a few questions, and then you would have the much of the time at the end. So interact with the speakers because me, I'm just here to say, okay, that person wanted to say something. I'm not doing anything else. That's my role. And I remind everyone, my name is Webster Cornet. I am an adjunct lecturer at Indiana University and welcome to everyone. And I am invited right now, the director of the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at Indiana University, so and introduce this conversation. Welcome, Dr. Ojeda. I'm so sorry for the pronunciation of your name. I'm
It's
saying,
okay. No, it's okay. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you, especially to Webster, for coordinating this very important conversation. This is part of our efforts to think seriously about the Caribbean, the Americas, and bring to the table this very important conversation. So thank you very much and welcome.
oh, thank you so much. Okay, we have three, like I said in the video that I published, three very important voices about Haitian politics and democracy. And I'm going to introduce each and every one of them who will understand. First, we started with Dr. Robert Fatton, who is the ambassador, Henry J. Taylor, and Mrs. Marion R. Taylor, emeritus professor of politics at the Department of Politics at the University of Virginia. In the past, he had served as a chair of the department and also associate dean of the graduate school. He authored several books and also like 1,000 of articles. And some of these books included in Haiti's Predatory Republic, The Unending Transition to Democracy, and also Haiti Trapped in the Outer Periphery. And in 2011, and he received the award for excellence in 2023, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Haitian Studies Association. Hello, Dr. Fatton. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's a great pleasure to introduce you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Should I start with my
Uh,
presentation then right now, or are you presenting the other?
yeah, if you can allow me, I can introduce the two other stars. And Haitian scholars and also we have Wolfgang Field, and who's the founder and executive director of Haiti Policy House, a Washington, D.C. based think tank advancing research and policy solutions focused on Haiti's foreign relations, security, economic development. And I can say over the last few years, the think tank has grown from a grassroots initiative into a national recognized voice, delivering briefings to the U.S. State Department, the National Security Council, and foreign governments as well. Hi, Wolf, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Okay. And I also invite people to visit the website of Haiti Policy House. There's a lot of content, very great content, well-researched content on this website. And lastly, we have, you said last, the best, and we have Dr. Greg Beckett, who is an associate professor of anthropology at Western University in Canada. His work focuses on the state, government, and non-governmental organizations, community organizing a lot, and also international interventions. He has worked for over 20 years on Matissan, if you know a little bit about Matissan in Haiti. And you know, it's a very it's a neighborhood, very contested neighborhood right now. And also, he published a book in the 2029, which has a few thoughts in the Haitian community. There is no more Haiti between life and death in Port-au-Prince. Hi, Dr. Biquet. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And now, like I said, first, what we're gonna have, and we're gonna have Dr. Fatten, who's gonna make a brief introduction or like give a brief assessment of the Haitian situation, then followed by Dr. Beckett, and then lastly with Wolf.
Well, thank you so much again for the invitation, and thank you for your kind introduction. Well, in my view, there will be no elections in Haiti this year. And if they were to take place, they would lead to another major political crisis. There are multiple reasons for this assessment. As we know, the departed Presidential Council failed to keep its promise to hold elections by February 7, 2026. But it commissioned the Electoral Council to promulgate new dates for these elections. An electoral law was thus adopted in early December 25 that set the fall of 2026 for holding the 2 rounds of a general election, culminating in the installation of a new democratically elected government on February 7th of next year. While initially the administration of Prime Minister Alix Fixeme, which succeeded the dissolved Presidential Council, accepted these dates, things changed rather quickly. Now it is unclear whether the elections will be held at all in 2026. This is not surprising, not only because the last census conducted in 2003 has old and outdated voters list, and that the distribution of a new identity cards is in disarray, but also because holding elections in the current climate of generalized insecurity would inevitably be illegitimate and exacerbate the crisis. Postponing elections to early 2027 is unlikely, however, to suddenly make them credible, free, and fair. In fact, existing conditions of violent gangsterization, logistical unpreparedness, and political polarization will continue to plague the country despite the deployment of the so-called gang suppression force. In fact, there is no basis to assume that by early 27, Port-au-Prince and the Artibonite, which account for nearly 60% of the electorate, will be liberated from armed violence and ready to vote. Moreover, by promising political parties millions of dollars in financial rewards for participating in the elections, the electoral law has provoked a proliferation of political parties. 282 parties are authorized to take part in the elections, and an overwhelming majority of them are based on clientelist and personalistic criteria. In fact, they are what you may call groupuscules, representing what Kern de Lens has defined as voluntary associations of political activists constituted at the initiative of an influential leader. These parties, in fact, are nothing but opportunistic and ephemeral political formations of what we may call in French, une bamboche démocratique. Elections are also confronting major financial obstacles. As of now, Prime Minister Fils-Aimé has rejected as outlandish the Electoral Council estimates that it needs $250 million to organize proper national elections and a mandated constitutional referendum. In fact, this referendum has complicated the feasibility of the elections and its outcome. Suffice it to say that at this moment, costs and dates of the elections are uncertain. To conclude, then, it seems to me that the result of any foreseeable election is likely to lead to an illegitimate outcome, another crisis of governability, and a new, interminable period of democratic transition. To believe that the Haitian crisis can be solved by such elections is to believe in some form of magical realism. And yet, the survival of Prime Minister Fils-Aimé depends on holding these elections to satisfy his foreign sponsors. This quandary raises serious questions about the immediate viability of his regime. I'm afraid then that the country continues to remain in a period of morbid uncertainty. It is an uncertainty that threatens the very fabric of Haitian society, but it has not compelled the dominant political and economic classes to abandon their traditional predatory practices, nor has it forced the international community to reconsider the neoliberal policies that have weakened the state and contributed to transforming Haiti into an NGO republic. The country is thus in dire need of new policies, but they conflict with the dogma of international financial institutions and the interests of powerful domestic and foreign forces. To escape the systemic crisis engulfing the country, Haitians and their rulers will have to finally decide to embark on a more accountable system of governance, reduce class inequalities, and free themselves from insidious foreign meddling. I'm afraid that failure to meet this challenge will exacerbate social polarization and continue to open the doors to political instability, gang violence, and extreme poverty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fatten. We have time to come back to it, but I'd like to may underline a key point, which is the maybe for you having more time to prepare the process would maybe ended up with more legitimacy and also credibility in this process. I think that's the for me the key point that I extracted from your assessment. Thank you so much. Like I said, we'll have time to come back to it. Even you're self pessimistic, I would say, but we have time to come back to it. Now, and we follow up with Dr. Beckett about his own assessment of the current situation.
Thank you again for having me. And, as much as I really want things to be otherwise, I have to agree with Dr. Fetton here that elections are really fraught right now, not too likely to happen. The strange world we live in now, I was just noticing that this online betting platform called Polymarket has a bid that you can bid on about whether or not elections will happen in Haiti. It's been trending down right now. That's a whole extra sideline thing that there might be people involved who want to block the elections, who might actually have bets on whether the election will happen or not, as we saw with a US special forces person who made money off of the date that they were going to kidnap Maduro from Venezuela. So there's a lot of external factors here. I just want to underscore a couple of the things I think that make the situation so logistically complex on the ground. Obviously, I do want to begin by saying that I think getting to a point where there can be credible, legitimate elections is essential, but not at all the end of the process of restoring some sort of governance in Haiti that is legitimate and representative, a Haitian-led solution. It's one step along the way. Legitimacy will have to be built by any government that gets elected after the fact. And given the weakening of the political infrastructure in the country, that itself is a bigger task than even the elections themselves. But the elections themselves are no easy task. And I've been a little surprised at just how much the international community has presented such thin and obviously untenable solutions over the past 5 or 10 years to the Haitian crisis. That includes things like backing up a little bit after the gangs staged a coup and kicked out Henri, the international community developed what the US was sort of shopping around to get some sort of UN mission in Haiti. Nobody really wanted to lead it. So we had this hybrid thing, that the old Kenyan-led MSS, the security mission that has now been transitioned into the gang suppression force. At that time, they called it a UN backed mission, but it wasn't a UN backed mission. It went through kind of UN chains of approval, but it wasn't financed by the UN. It was totally voluntarily financed. No one really wanted to lead it, didn't have any capacity. And the curious thing is that nobody had bothered to see if it was even legal for Kenya to send police officers to Haiti, which it wasn't until a certain document was signed. You have to have reciprocal policing arrangements between governments. So to me, that's emblematic of what we're seeing now too, just an actual lack of thought of the process and the complexities. There's obviously a concern to get elections to happen. I think personally that's being driven largely by the US that wants to be able to say once elections happen, they can say Haiti is stable enough to end the temporary protected status of 300,000 or so people in the US right now and to begin deporting people back. Haiti has no capacity to absorb the people that are on TPS status in the US right now. An election is not itself stability. So I think there's a lot of push to make elections happen. And as Robert said, for the current prime minister, that there will only stay in power as long as people believe they're heading towards elections. But the game ever since the assassination of Moise has been kick the can down the road, stay in some sort of transitional capacity to at the level of government and delay. We've seen delays at every level of the process. We've seen them this week with the CEP's budget and then the Haitian government rejecting the budget. We've seen that the registration has already been delayed without a new date. So the process is already beginning to show how fragile it is. Before you can even do voter registration, we have to get the national ID card situation sorted out. In the neighborhoods where I work in Port-au-Prince, like Martezan, many of the places that people might go to get the new biometrically coded national identification card are closed. Many of them have been burnt down or taken over by gangs. The gangs have stolen equipment. So the capacity to get the voter registration card up and out to everybody. We're talking about a situation where 1.5 million people are internally displaced from Port-au-Prince. The CEP, the Electoral Council's own estimate a few months ago was that 23 communes are absolutely inaccessible for any kind of campaigning or registration. So before the election, if we even get the date to stand, the process begins now, and we need to think about how credible it is, how we can even get people registered. The thing I'm surprised about too is that there's really been maybe I've been missing it, so I hope that maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen a lot of welcoming in to civil society organizations to help shape this process and make it feel more credible. Before we entered into all these phases of transitional governments, there was a really robust consensus building model, the Montana Accord that wasn't taken, a path that wasn't taken, that had its own flaws, but had a lot of civil society groups kind of buying in. Instead, as Dr. Fattah has said, the kind of monetization of the process has actually fractured an already incredibly fractured political landscape in Haiti. So 282 parties across all the different seats. Even if elections go through, you're going to have 281 unhappy political parties who are going to build consensus. So building that some sort of national consensus, building a sense of security that people feel they can even go down the street to vote. the gang suppression force isn't estimated to be scaled up to its capacity until the fall, even at its slated capacity of 5,000 police officers or soldiers. It's not enough to project force through the entire national territory. And so the security situation is, I think, incredibly complicated at every level. And yet, elections do have to happen. If they don't, the longer the void stays open, the more the gangs kind of entrench themselves as the kingmakers of the political process and take more and more territory. So it's a bit of a catch-22, and I wish I was more convinced that the elections were going to happen and could be credible. I hope that they can be still and maybe delaying them. But I'll yield some time now. We can come back to all these things in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the assessment. There are a lot of very important points, and one of them that I wanted to highlight is about like the push for elections in Haiti. We know like the gang suppression force is clear backed by the US and might be a way to bring so not an answer like what I was saying because the migration of Haitian in the US right now, the push for for election might be a way to and I don't know to answer like the questions about migration, whether or not we should or like the administration should and send people back to Haiti. Okay, thank you so much. We have time to come back. And migration is one of the geopolitical implications because since the 19th century, we can see like how the double debt we mentioned earlier in our conversation was a key about the drive people out of the country. Now with Wolf and the last one we said in Haitian queer we usually say like Pipiti le dernier. No, the youngest at the end, but but it's not about that right now.
Listen, I'm just
Okay,
happy to be at the table. I'm just happy to be here among
yeah,
peers.
exactly. Okay, thank you, Wolf. Please share with us your insight about
Yeah,
the administration.
I agree with both Dr. Factor and Dr. Beckett because, I mean, with any elections, you would need some kind of campaigning. You need people to know who they will be voting for. You need people to know, I mean, the policies they will be voting for in a good election, not a great or perfect election. And where Haiti is today, I don't think the international community is looking at it in a perspective that is non-traditional because Haiti is a non-traditional place, and it is currently in a very non-traditional situation where I look at it as the social trust and social contract that people sign with each other. One, I mean, it's kind of like three-way where the government is at the top, and then on one end is the people, and on the other end is the private sector. And I think those three together decide what happens in the country. And right now, that social contract between all three is broken. And to get to elections, to get people to a place where they can trust the police, they can trust the government, they can trust the private sector, I think the government needs to move from a place where they are thinking about bringing all these together. I think right now the prime minister's office and the government is more aligned with the private sector, given who the prime minister is and his background. I think that connection is stronger now. But however, the connection between that side and the people is still missing. And, from the government to the people, basic things like being able to feel safe in your neighborhood, whether or not they can, right now the government can't go against the gangs because they don't have the strength to do so. So therefore they can't fulfill the need to protect kids, protect women, protect small businesses, protect hospitals. They can't do that. On the other side, the government can't also protect the large investments that have been made in Haiti, the factories and all that. The government, if the gangs decide to, like Balaville or down to Port-au-Prince, they want to burn something, they can do so because they have control of those territories. So the government can't protect some of the private sector's investments. And historically, I mean, we've heard about this of the how some of the members of the private sector have funded gangs in the past, and some of them have been sanctioned for it. And when you really think about it as well, it's like in a society where the government can provide safety and security for a specific business, what is the likelihood of that person now circumventing that system to pay for its own security? Or to even, and that in turn, I mean, it is in a selfish way, it is protecting their own business, but it's on the flip side of things, is also bringing us to where we are today because the money is flowing to the gangs and all of that. And I think that is a social contract between the government and the private sector, which is broken. And on the other, at the bottom of it, the social contract between the private sector and the people, meaning paying taxes, paying fair wages. I mean, today, when you ask the minimum wage in Haiti, they usually use the number $120 US per month. In a congressional briefing, this sounds like a lot of, oh, $120, that sounds like a lot of money. But when you really break it down, that is less than 75 cents per hour. And that is only if the person works 8 hours a day. And now, I mean, this past few weeks, we've seen protests in Haiti at different factories for people asking for an increase in minimum wage. And and still you have private sector members that are saying, hey, we don't see the need for a minimum wage because the country is not working. And I was like, well, the gangs are paying $1,000 a week. That's the reality. And how do you prevent people from going one side to the other to actually wake up today and say, you know what, I'm going to work and make a livable wage to take care of my kids, take care of my family, and even to even think about voting for someone in the future. I was to even have the mental space to think about an election. And I think we are far from that. And those three parties and the same, I mean, if you want to talk about the social contract between the people and the government and the private sector, you look at, well, I think that group is the most vulnerable one because they tend to be the ones with the less power. But the gangs are also part of that group. I think there's also a social contract between whether or not you would burn a hospital, you would burn a library, you would harm innocent people. That is also a social contract. And, then you start talking about transitional justice and the social contract between citizens. And I think all of that bubbles up to who people would want to see, who would vote for in an election, if they won't even think about an election in terms of justice, funding. So to me, it all starts from trust and rebuilding that triangle and that pyramid of trust. And I think from there, we can start talking about other things.
Very, very important. Thank you. And that a little bit brings me back. So Lionel Trouillot is a Haitian writer, always talking about social contract between different and parties and like sectors in the country. And also and your point, I think one of the takeout is the trust that there's a loss. And if we can remember from like election of 2006 when Preval was running, it was around 67% people who voted. But in 2017, in 2010 or 2017, it was on, no, in 2016, it was only 17% who voted in the second round of the elections. That's a loss that we have, the trust that we lost because, and like you mentioned, the credibility is not only about institutional, it's not institutional credibility, but also us as citizens, how much do we trust actually this agency to run elections or and safe elections in the country? And thank you very much. Okay, now like I said since the beginning, I know the conversation will be about the situation in Haiti, but we wanted to extend it a little bit further. And now I wanted to bring back Dr. Faton, who mentioned the cost, and it was for me it was outstanding, like the 250 billion. And yesterday, the Council, Electoral Council published, I would say, release a document to say they have a meeting with PNUD and United Nations and also UNOPS. And that also make me thinking about the fact that even the international community is still saying that it should be Haitian-led election, but they are still inside the process. How do you see that? And the question that we've been asking ourselves, why do you think it's important as someone who has conducted research for over 40 years on the country? You have, I remember I was watching a conversation with Wolf. You said like when Aristide was elected in 90 in 1980s and 90s, you were so hopeful. And why do you think like it's so important for the international community, whether it's CARICOM, OAS, to be so involved in Haitian politics?
Well, this is a problem because if you want to have legitimate elections, while you can depend on assistance, and cooperation from the international community, you don't want the international community to be, in fact, the key agent of those elections and ultimately the key decider of who's going to win or lose. And that has been a problem in previous elections in Haiti. I mean, one can remember the election of Michel Martelly, Sweet Mickey, and one can remember that the Secretary of State then, Hillary Clinton, went to Haiti and she literally interviewed the three major candidates, Jude Celestin, Madame Maniga, and Sweet Mickey, and she decided, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that, well, Sweet Mickey was the man. Why? We never knew exactly why. But the point is that those elections took place. They were, to a large degree, uh, demanded by the international community, orchestrated by the international community, and ultimately decided by the international community. Those are elections that cannot resolve the problems of Haiti, and we saw that very quickly, that the election of Sweet Mickey didn't resolve anything. Now, that doesn't mean that elections are not critical. Elections are quite important, but if they are not legitimate, if they are not really elections that are grounded in the society itself and the decisions of the people of that society, then elections are a farce. So this is the problem that we face. Those elections, if they are going to take place and be meaningful, need to be rooted in the Haitian terrain and not by essentially spokesperson for the international community. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Maybe
That's okay.
I like to listen to the sound of my voice. Maybe I didn't want anyone else to hear from me. What I was saying is a subtle point that I want you to also address. For example, when we say like CARICOM, OAS, so involved, do you see any hemispheric interest in that?
Is that to me again?
Yeah, to you,
Okay.
like for
Oh
example,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there are all kinds of foreign interest,
Mhm.
inevitably implicated in the Haitian crisis. The United States has always been involved in Haitian politics, at least since the occupation in the last century. Uh, the OAS, in my view, is an organization that has a very limited autonomy from the United States, and the same with CARICOM, especially now. One of the things that has happened recently is that when Trump was elected, I had assumed that we were moving towards a more multipolar world. Well, we may be, but not in Latin America. Latin America, from the perspective of the United States, is essentially its backyard, and they've said so. You can see what they did in Venezuela. You go into a country and you kidnap the leader of that country, whether you like him or not is irrelevant, but that's what they did. They are threatening Cuba. They are threatening Mexico with massive tariffs. His industrialized neighbor in the north, jokes about it being simply, a state and the prime minister a governor. He names unilaterally the Gulf of America, where, I mean, when you think about that, it's very difficult to see how any country can extricate itself from the domination of the United States. It's not impossible, but it's extremely complicated. At one point, there might have been a possibility to kind of playing the field and invite the Chinese, but I think this is not going to happen under the Trump administration. Look at what happened in Panama. He simply decided that whatever agreement the Panama government had with China, that doesn't matter. The hell with it. So the room for maneuver, especially for Haiti, is extremely limited. And then you have, and I think Greg mentioned it, you have about 300,000 Haitians, the TPS, they don't know what the heck is going to happen to them. And if they were compelled to exit the United States, that would be a huge problem for Haiti, not only to receive them. I don't think that is a possibility, just to send 300,000 Haitians, especially given that the airport is closed and the security situation. But he could send many of them to countries in sub-Saharan Africa or in Central America. But there's another problem that powerful diaspora has contributed greatly to the survival of Haiti. I mean, $3 billion at least is sent annually by the diaspora. If you cut that, we are in deep, deep trouble, especially the poorest segment of the Haitian population. So we are clearly implicated in the international geopolitical arena. But on the other hand, we have limited room for maneuver. And the government that we have now, I think, is totally dependent on whatever Rubio decides with the other members of the American administration.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we come back also to Dr. Beckett. And you mentioned in your intervention, you refer to the migration, and we know, and whenever there is a crisis in Haiti, there's a rise in migration. We can see that in 2004 or 2010. A lot of Haitian brothers and sisters went to South America. But your point and took into account the U.S. But also, I was also thinking about the Dominican Republic, South America, and how do you think election might help reshape the connection or like the relation might help a little bit reshape the relationship that we have based on immigration with other regional or like in every country in Americas, broadly in America, in the Americas. I think we can hear you. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was me doing something.
Really great questions and an important context to think regionally. I mean, I think the longer elections are delayed, or if they're not credible, or if there's some sort of gang insertion into the process, you'll see a lot more people trying to get out of Haiti. So that would put a lot of pressure on the whole pathway up, through the Darien Gap in Panama, all the way up through Central America, Mexico, and Haiti. In the Caribbean, I think partly, Webster, what you were just talking about is also partly answering one of your earlier questions about why CARICOM is involved in the process. I do think Haiti, despite its historic role in shaping a path to freedom for every other country in the hemisphere, Haiti doesn't have a lot of friends when it's in the shadow of the US. And so, I don't see the Dominican Republic wanting anything except elections, which will allow them to continue their deportation and denationalization. The complexity of the situation in Haiti is so deep and so vast, we don't even get to the top five crises in any conversation. I mean, we're still reeling from a context in which the Dominican Republic 15 years or so ago stripped citizenship of Dominicans of Haitian descent going back 3 generations that have been kicking and deporting Haitians out of the country, Haitian migrants and people who should have a claim to Dominican citizenship but are of Haitian descent. There's somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million people along the border that are in a vague status. Many of them have no Haitian documents but are now in Haiti. So how are they going to get represented or folded into the? So that regional crisis is vast, and I think that My sense is that because of the way the U.S. has shaped the policy around Haiti in the region, most of the regional powers see their relationship to Haiti as access to cheap, mobile labor that they can send back when they're done. And I think that elections, again, give the cover of stability for deportations, extraditions, sending migrants back instead of letting them stay. So part of the push to a Haitian-led stability or looking at elections, I think, has to do with a kind of regional framing of kind of trying to contain the crisis from spreading outside of Haiti's borders. And by that, they mean Haitians leaving Haiti. And so I think most of the policy from the US end has been really aimed at that, a kind of policy of containment. And so the idea of a credible election is really who can we get into power who will work with that US policy. Ever since the presidency of, well, Dr. Fattah mentioned the selection process rather than the election of Martelly, and then he handpicked Moise. That election itself in 2016, 2017 was rerun. There's a kind of questions of legitimacy. Moise was potentially out after waves of mass mobilization against his government in 2018 and 2019, which really goes back to Wolf's point about the social contract breaking down even before the gangs, because we have still the legacy of three or four audit reports about the depth of corruption of the reconstruction fronts from the last couple of elected Haitian governments. And so trust in what a government in Haiti does, even when it's there, is at an all-time low. The US's only concern at that moment of the political crisis was to make sure Moise and then Henri after him pivoted to taking their support away from Maduro in Venezuela to backing the US's support of the opposition in Venezuela. So obviously, the US will not allow a government in Haiti to form that doesn't conform to its interests in the region, which are nakedly imperialistic right now. They've always been imperialistic, and in relation to Haiti especially, but they're just rabidly imperialistic in a kind of manifest destiny Monroe doctrine kind of early 19th century way in terms of the US fighting against Chinese influence in the region. So the election is kind of happening in that shadow. And I think all the other regional players, which are trying to position themselves in relationship to Trump and Rubio's new, they call it the Dunroe Doctrine, or some people call it the Dunroe Doctrine for Trump. So everyone's trying to position themselves in relation to that. So Haiti's not likely to have a lot of friends who will want anything more than a minimal election of a government that does the interests of the private sector, works with the gang suppression force, and keeps Haitians from leaving the country.
Thank you so much. And giving the idea about the cheap labor, I was rereading the ransom, remember the report published by New York Times, and the fact that during the US occupation compared to Cuba, the Dominican Republic, how the labor was so cheap in Haiti and less 2 times less compared to other countries. And that's really talks to me. Well, and I was thinking we talk a lot about the delay, or maybe and like I said in the beginning, Dr. Faton is a little bit pessimistic about the election in Haiti. Do you see any potential risk, let's say diplomatic or like foreign relation potential risk if the election is being delayed again one more time?
Believe it or not, I think all of the people involved in this election situation knows that it's not going to happen this year. They won't say it. They won't, go on TV and mention it, but they all know election in August is not happening. So there will be a delay. And actually, that might be a blessing because election in August right now could be an even worse situation, like Dr. Faton said, for Haiti. And delaying it or postponing it till next year when the country can actually know where it's going makes more sense. And again, all of the actors know that this is not happening this year.
And you see like any potential, for example, like that can affect relationship, foreign relationship, diplomatic relationship, whether regional relationship or like across the America, like, and because we had the discussion like without election sometimes you don't have a representative, so engage Haiti in certain areas, diplomatic areas. You see where I'm going?
Mhm.
And do you think any potential delay or like postponing of the election would cause or like I would say affect much more the Haiti and on the foreign world, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, that is an issue usually when the United States doesn't support you. And I think with the current administration having the support of the United States, it's kind of like having like a winning a temporary election, to be honest. Because one thing we've also seen in the past is like um, politicians in Haiti do more campaigning to the international community than they do to Haitians because they understand their legitimacy. Even like right now, like the current government is functioning without being elected. But in the international community, because the U.S. says they want this group of individuals and politicians, it doesn't matter if they're not elected. It doesn't matter how they got there. If they got that step of approval, they can maneuver however they want. And I think that's I think a lot of times that's the false sense of security that politicians have because they have the support of the United States. I think one thing I wish, at least this time around, I wish a lot more Haitians notice is that regardless of what's happening, regardless of who's in power, who's doing this and who's doing that, they still need you to wake up one morning and go to a ballot. That needs to happen. It doesn't matter because I feel like sometimes we don't understand the power that we have because an election, we're going to an election because they want to do XYZ. And they can do XYZ when we vote. And we vote because we think this election is in our favor. But I think a lot of times as citizens, specifically in Haiti, we don't realize that we just think an election is happening and we're going to vote. But we don't realize that a lot of these plans that they have don't happen unless we get up and we go vote and we have an election, we have a government set in place. And I think this time around, part of my mission is to help people understand the weight of the vote that they have. And also understanding that regardless of amount of money that this person has in Haiti, right, regardless of the amount of political capital they have with the international community, at the end of the day, they still need people from Artisan, they still need people from Cité Soleil to get up and go to the ballot and vote.
Thank you so much. Now it's time to open the mic. So, people in the audience, thank you so much because everyone, I don't have any time. So, remind everyone. So, anyone, so turn off camera, audio. Thank you so much. But also, me, I don't know why I'm so a little bit optimistic. I remember after the earthquake, at least maybe the country didn't believe election would be happening at the end of the year. I don't know if we're gonna respect the first round that should be taking place in August, but I think it's still possible to have election at the end of this year, and maybe like we can change the agenda, the calendar. But I think I remember like the 2010, if you can remember, like after the 2010, we didn't even believe that school gonna be reopened in February at that time. So. Okay, now if someone else would like to ask a question, you can turn on your camera or like your audio. Please feel free to do it.
I do want to say quickly, technically, you can have an election. Now, is it the right thing to do? Or is it the most optimal thing to do for the growth, development, and safety and long-term stability of the country? That's a different story. Technically, you can have an election tomorrow if you want, technically. But would that solve anything? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point that a lot of the boosterism around the election from the international community, especially, really treats it as if the election is a solution to the crisis. And we've seen over the past couple of decades, sometimes elections only deepen the already existing crises that are there.
Here I was trying to do a little bit advocacy in the chat. So ask people to ask questions. I don't know if no one else would like to ask a question right now. I may have a few other.
Well, this is Jean-Jacques. Maybe I can
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. If you
yeah.
can just give me 1 second. And Professor Jean-Jacques is from L'École ITI, York University. If you see on social media, and L'École ITI, and has been supporting us and sharing, spreading the webinar. Thank you so much for your support.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for letting me know about this and putting this on. And I just wanted to just thank the panelists and really, I really appreciate this point that man, the overlapping crises are so complex, right? The theme today, of course, was about the election, but it's tied up to so many other things, and I wonder whether I guess I'm asking the question is, how can we have longer form opportunities to try to disentangle those things, right? So these kinds of conversations are very important, and they just remind me of how much we need to spend more time together, right? Because the question of the election itself, when you pull it out on its own, as Wolf is saying, like it's not clear that that's the number one thing that's going to help the people we care about in Haiti today, right? As important as we all feel that it is to obviously legitimate governments through the electoral process. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much. Would someone would like to react? No reaction?
I'll gladly say Haiti policy has been ignored. Shameless
Okay.
plug.
Okay. If we can also go back, so and I don't know, the rising, because it's also a concern right now, the China is rising in the Western Hemisphere. I was reading for this webinar, I was reading some numbers from Observatory of Economic Complexity, and it says that in February 2026, China imports from Haiti essential oils and knit t-shirts and electrical transformers, and also like it was it's it's increasing, and this month and also next month. And I was thinking about the fact that China, we don't have a formal diplomatic relationship with China. And but with China entering the Caribbean, I would say in Jamaica, they have very strong tie in Jamaica and also South America. Do you see any potential with strengthening or also opening to China? Because China has been accusing in Haiti. You remember, like during the COVID-19, it was supporting with masks and and other stuff. And China is not absent in the Caribbean. So to say it blatantly, would you see any potential benefit and with strengthening or creating a strong tie with China
Yeah, I
right
think
now in the long run?
as Jean-Jacques noted in the chat, I think it's a political impossibility right now because Haiti diplomatically recognizes Taiwan and gets quite a lot of foreign aid from Taiwan, or has in the past at least. I remember in previous decades there'd be all these pickup trucks being used for kind of civil society government things. They said gift of Taiwan across them. I don't know how much is coming from Taiwan right now, but that would have to happen first. And then, of course, recognizing or opening relations with China would be probably a non-starter for the U.S. regime right now because they're starting to push back against, as Dr. Fatah said, they're trying to push Panama to get the port back from China. Jamaica's had a different relation there. I mean, I get the question because in Jamaica it's opened up new avenues for funding large-scale public infrastructure projects. The tension in Jamaica has been that it's come at the expense of potentially giving lots of access to ports or to land to Chinese investment. I think it's a non-starter in Haiti in part because there aren't the same kinds of pre-existing ports that China might want, other than kind of access to the US market. One of the things that foreign investment finds attractive about Haiti is that it's had in the past a kind of open back door into the US market. So a Taiwanese firm could set up a factory in Haiti and get access to selling t-shirts in Walmart, and it wouldn't be labeled under a tariff system. So Haiti's kind of relationship economically really is that's its thing. It can kind of sell to the world, and that's been what economists and American policy under Bill Clinton and everybody since then, or even before that, going back to the Duvalier era, that's been the sort of economic policy to make Haiti a Taiwan of the Caribbean. So I don't think it's an avenue for them. I think that's part of the trap of the vice that Haiti's in right now is that the only as Dr. Fattan said, the only room for maneuver is the space that the U.S. has sort of left open for Haiti to move in.
Thank you so much for the insights. And Wolf, you're really into data, Dr. Fatten. You would like to add a few things
Well,
about it?
yeah, it would be a good thing for Haiti to, as it were, play the field. In other words, to multiply its dependence to not just on the United States and some European powers, but really to have much stronger relations with countries like Brazil, like India, even in the Middle East. So you diversify your dependence, so you're not completely at the mercy of the United States. But the problem is that the Trump administration does not like that kind of strategy, especially when China's name is mentioned. China is the rising power, the US is the relatively declining power, and they don't want to give China any opening, in particular in the Western Hemisphere. The United States considers the Western Hemisphere, as I've said, like its backyard. Even countries like Brazil, Mexico, I mean, the way they are treated is rather incredible. Uh, so there is a problem for a country like Haiti, but diversifying your dependence should be a strategy. Now, one of the problems with Haiti is that Haitian diplomacy has not been very effective and has not been very creative. It's always the same countries which are represented. There is no thinking about changing, if you wish, the paradigm. That does not exist. And this is something that should happen if you want to move forward. But again, you have the big elephant in the room, which is the United States. So you have to maneuver, and that requires a very high degree of subtlety. But one may be reminded, however, that Préval managed something that few presidents were capable of managing. He opened relationship much more significantly with Cuba and with Venezuela, when those two countries at the time were considered to be enemies of the United States. How he did it was by being extremely clever. Unfortunately, that didn't last very long. Once Préval was gone, the thing fell apart, and that was to some extent caused by the massive earthquake. So we have some thinking to do in terms of Haitian diplomacy before we can even begin to engineer some sort of new international policy for the country.
Thank you. If I can go a little bit go back to Wolf, and because like I said in the beginning, it's if we go to visit Haiti Policy House website, a lot of data, a lot of I would say math to do. And I was thinking about I was reading an article and recently about how elections in Haiti can cause inflation. And with, for example, like the 250 million, and I was reading an article at Le Nouveliste, and where the prime minister, actual prime minister, was unhappy with this number. Would you have a little idea about, like, an assessment about how the cost has been risen over the years, over the last polls, or like you have some idea about it, and maybe like some, for example, Franz Duval, who is the editor-in-chief of Le Nouvel, said, whenever we have international community support, the cost tends to be risen. And have you seen this pattern, or like, do you have how have you I would say, how have you assessed the rise of the cost of the elections over the past, I would say, 6 or 7 polls? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I mean, elections in Haiti is big business. At the end of the day, I mean, we talked about the 282 political parties, and I think each of them are getting a couple million goods just for being a political party that's willing to go in elections. And on top of that, you think about everything from poll workers making T-shirts, buying equipment, and there are a lot of rooms for people to just skim off the top. And um, you know, I get it. Haiti is not in a place where it has its own fully functional electoral system where the equipment are set up, and there's like a flow of there's like a system where you just fall into to just like press a button and just it activates. However, I think in a country that doesn't require high tech advanced systems to run an election, people are still counting ballots by hand. It takes like 9 days on average. There shouldn't be just so much such an inflation, and with $250 million, that's US, and the price of everything goes up. If you're a contractor trying to get a contract, to work in anything remotely related to elections, even to purchase cars. If you're selling cars to the Haitian government during elections, the price is going to double because the Haitian government has that money, and at the same time, the Haitian government also has connections with folks in Haiti who are big business, who they want to keep happy. And you can't go buy cars in DR where there are what's called dealerships in Haiti. That will cause a lot of frictions, and you start seeing news about barbecue being active again. And yeah, I mean, any kind of money that level of money going into Haiti in such a short amount of time will create a level of inflation. Another thing to look at as well, and something that we've been really paying attention to is like the level of transportation in and out of Haiti with flights. Like last year in the first quarter, Haiti saw about about 2,000 flights between January to April. That is domestic and international. And this year, by itself, by the end of this quarter, Haiti will see about 8,000 flights. So that's almost, I mean, by the end of the year, that number is going to probably like quadruple in number of flights. And I think that is despite the closure from the Dominican Republic and also closure from the FAA ban that's been happening. And I think, flights are not cheap, but the money is coming from somewhere. And I think all of that is connected together with the inflation costs. And I just think, there's a lot more to dive into. You muted. Webster, you muted.
I like to hear the sound of my voice. I don't want people to enjoy it. Thank you so much. And I don't know. I'm really interested into seeing that how like the cost has been raised over the years, over the elections. Before coming to Dr. Cadishon, we had a question from Debbie Jean-Jacques who said that what can Haiti learn from DR being the DR has relationship with the US and China. Maybe I was thinking DR maybe one of the places of the countries in the Americas that is that banned, I think actually. Not in the ban list, I think. DR is not included, and we see they have a very good relationship with US. I don't know if you have something to say about this question. What can Haiti learn from DR being DR has relationship with the US and China? Maybe that bring us back a little bit to the China question?
Well, I think that the DR established its relationship before, obviously, Trump. And the DR has managed indeed to play the field. They are recognized by Russia too. They're recognized by China, by India. They have significant diplomatic presence in the DR. I'm not sure what is going to happen now. I mean, what you can see, for instance, many of the Caribbean countries have actually relationship with China. On the other hand, the United States is pushing them to abandon those relationships. It's very similar to the presence of Cuban doctors in the Caribbean. And this is one of the most bizarre thing. Uh, Even if you dislike Cuba, to tell the Caribbean countries with very limited health facilities that they have to expel Cuban doctors simply because they are Cubans is a rather bizarre, call. And many of the Caribbean countries have actually accepted to tell the Cubans to exit, even when they benefited greatly. So you have that presence of the United States involved in the internal affairs of all of those countries. And it's very difficult to see how you can maneuver. It may well be that if you have a new administration, things will change. But at the moment, this is extremely delicate, and I don't see the Haitian government doing it. In fact, there was a delegation of the Haitian government going to Taiwan. So I don't see any type of drastic diplomatic departure. One final notion related to the elections. I'm reminded that the election in 2016 was about 50 to $55 million. Now it's 250 that they're asking. It probably will go lower. But what is quite important to remember is that whenever we have elections, Haitian authorities reconstitute the whole machinery. I mean, this is one of the most amazing thing about the call for a new constitution. We have a constitution that has been violated continuously, and then they blame the constitution for the ills of Haiti. And one of the principal things that that constitution had asked in 87 is to have a permanent electoral council. We don't have it, and we won't have it because it's big business. Politics in Haiti is big business. And this is related to the political economy of the country. Most people are not doing well. So you enter into politics to make a buck. And you have the traditional economic elite, which is kind of, as they say in Haitian, la politique de doublure. They have the economic power and they manipulate the whole thing with the international community. And I don't want to be too pessimistic, but there is a reality that is overwhelming. Now, we know that history can change suddenly, but at the moment, I don't see that change. Although in the last few days, I was reading about the protest in Cap-Haïtien, which is an interesting phenomenon that has raised a political temperature. The youth in Cape Haitian is really discontented with the government and with the environment in Cap-Haïtien. Apparently, Cap-Haïtien has been inundated by garbage, and the pipes don't work, the water is not clean, the streets are not clean, the main connection between the national road and other parts of the north are not functioning. So there is a general discontent. And one may hope that that discontent can be used constructively to change the current situation. So we shall see. But I don't want to be called pessimistic. I was extremely optimistic in 1986, in 1991, and even immediately after the earthquake, but things fell apart. So I guess when you get old, you've seen too many of those things.
Wolf and I, we have time to be optimistic. Like
You
we have a
should.
little time. Okay, thank you. Okay, Adam, this is the last question from Dr. Kadishon, who is a leading a scholar in mental health in Haiti. And maybe one day you can work about the cost of election on mental health in Haiti, on Haitian. And Dr. Kadishon.
All right. Hi, everyone. Uh, thank
Hi.
you for this amazing conversation, first of all. Uh, I am young too, but I am very pessimistic right now. Just to to say, yeah, I wasn't born yet in 1986. So, but I was born later. But when I'm taking a look at what's going on now, I'm kind of pessimistic, and I'm gonna say why. But let me ask the question first. What do you think should be done clearly to make sure the upcoming election, whenever they will happen, whenever they will take place, uh, what should be done to make sure they will be there is an expression in French, I'm gonna translate that literally, to make sure they will be honest, credible, and democratic, like honnête, credible, et démocratique. Well, the reason why I'm asking this question is like Wolf mentioned something that we the population needs to understand, to remember that they have a power, like they can vote. Me as someone who can vote, I had a chance to do that when I was in Haiti. The problem is you're not sure that your vote matters because, for example, what happened after the massive earthquake, we heard or we know that the two candidates we had during the second round were not the one who was supposed to have in the second round. So it's like as an elector, as someone who is going to vote and who knows, oh, it doesn't matter. So this is something we need to understand because we have some internal risk factors, but also external risk factors. And as a mental health professional, there's something I noticed, for example, during the pandemic, during COVID-19. So there was like a rise of anxiety, depression. One of the risk factors specific to the Asian community, I was in Haiti at that moment. And I said that on the national TV. One of the risk factor was the fact that the population didn't believe at all in the capacity of the government to fix the problem, to come up with a solution. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Why should I go to vote when I know, first of all, anything can happen. If even if the population votes for someone, they may not see this person in the second round, first of all. And now we know that the authorities right now, some of them, there's no way they could be elected in a fair election, which means they are fine with that situation. They're not gonna say it, but they are fine with it. So because there's no other way for them to be to be on power. So there is the problem is very complex. So when we consider the complexity of it, my question is, I want to be optimistic. As a mental health professional working with people, I really want to be optimistic. But if I want to be very objective, realistically, I cannot say I'm gonna be optimistic. So the question is, what should be done to make sure those upcoming election will be honest, credible, and democratic?
The next webinar gonna be optimist versus pessimist election in Haiti. I'm not serious. So, and for the thank you, Jeff, for the question. And also, and you all got 2 minutes, and 2 minutes. I would be very happy if you could answer and also address the question, but also share your final words, please, because we are extending and I don't know, exploited. We are exploited our 6:15 p.m. We are past 6:15 p.m. Yes, 2 minutes to everyone, please. You can use it to address Jeff's question and also share your final thoughts in 2 minutes.
Of course. I think to have elections that is fair, democratic, um, again, it bringing the population to within a place where they can actually think about an election is number one. I think having security is important. Getting people to and reducing the basic standard of like reducing the inflation rate is important as well, to getting people to that place where they can actually, again, psychologically, when people stay in a state of fear, state of instability, state of not knowing what they can only think about what to do tomorrow, or even what am I going to eat tonight. It's hard to think about 10 years ahead and think about political strategies and all these different things. And I think to me, that's where it starts. I always think about just regular people, whether or not they see themselves having a future in Haiti. And I think that also contributes to whether or not somebody wakes up today and say, I want to go vote. Because voting requires you to have some level of hope in whatever is happening. So that's where I'll start.
Okay. A final words, optimist. A final words for the country, for
I mean, I'm optimistic to some degree. I mean, there's a lot to be. I think I usually say like 80% of the success for the next 5 years depends on what the current government does, the prime minister does right now, because he has all the power in his hands. Everything that could work in his favor to do something great is in its favor at the moment. And I think that's the part that will determine for me whether or not I go 60% or 70% pessimistic versus where I'm now 50-50. So
thank you, Dr. Beckett. You can address Jeff's question if you can remember what should we do to,
Mhm.
yes, to increase faith, I would say, and also final
Yeah,
word.
it's a really important question, and I think that it circles back to a couple of themes that have come up repeatedly. I think Wolf put it best when he talked about trust and social contract. Again, I've been just kind of a little surprised. Maybe I want to say that I don't really see anyone involved in the election process at any level trying to mobilize enthusiasm about the process. And I think that's remarkable because again, I am wasn't in Haiti for them, but I'm old enough to have watched on the news and became interested in Haiti during the 90s after the dictatorship and that first election in 91 they brought Aristide and that it's I mean obviously that's a very specific historical moment but ever since then there's been a lower and lower turnout. We mentioned in the 2016 election the turnout was something like 17 or 19% of the possible electorate. So that's very low. I mean, so even to get a credible election, you want a high turnout, you want security, but you want some sort of faith that the government would do something. And that social contract to a government, I mean, people in the neighborhoods where I work in often talk about it in terms of the state either existing or not as a way of critiquing, like, well, we don't have a government, we don't because it doesn't do anything. But when they talk about what they want the government to do, they talk about the responsibilities of what a government owes to its citizens. And I've just been struck that there's no one out there campaigning about what a Haitian government coming out of this election would do other than be a broker for, receiving deportees from the US, which is what it has been in the past decade or so, or other than a path for diplomatic immunity for crimes, as it has been with drug dealers or other people in power, or other than as a means to steal money. And so generating that faith that a government is for something in Haiti, I think is really key. That's where I thought that the real missing piece in this equation has been civil society. And again, a remarkable thing there is that in the 90s and in the 2000s, as the US government was unhappy with Aristide, they really pivoted to supporting civil society, which was mobilizing against him. So the 90s and 2000s era of democratization around the world was really about civil society organizations being emblematic of a more robust democratization of society, not just elections. Here, I think we've seen the international community actually blocking any kind of Haitian civil society that is not the most obvious representatives of the private sector, some of whom are now under sanctions from the Canadian government and from the UN, as well as the gangs. I think I'll put myself in the pessimistic camp, but I want to be optimistic. I really want to be optimistic. And I think Haitian history gives us, on a longer term timeline, a lot of reasons to be optimistic that there can be kinds of change, revolutionary kinds of change. I think in the short term, it's very hard. And I would just add maybe one final thought, which is that we haven't talked about the way that the gangs really changed the situation, but the gangs are the form they've taken under the federated form they've taken under barbecue and others. I think are a significantly different political actor than we've seen in the past in Haiti, because the gangs don't need to control territory, whereas a Haitian state needs to be able to project force over the whole national territory to build that sense of security and trust. The gangs have shown that they can take a fuel terminal for 2 weeks at a time. They can close the three main roads in and out of the capital. They can block whatever they want to block, a kind of critical infrastructure for short periods. So their capacity to disrupt is very, very large. And then they are, of course, inserted into the kind of economy on the ground. So if elections are big business, the gangs are either going to block it because it interferes with their business, or they're going to insert themselves into the big business aspect of it. And I think that that is just yet another layer of complexity.
Hey, thank you so much. And 2 minutes with Dr. Fatten. We're past and 6:15, and I'm so sorry. And thank you also for being. We're not gonna and go until 30. I promise. That's the last question. Not a question, actually. Dr. Fatten, 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Well, I think the problems that we have now are the results of the clear failures of the past. In other words, when you look at the 90s, the rise of Lavalas, there was a real popular movement. Lavalas, because of its own internal problems and because of the external community, was to a large degree a failure, unfortunately. And that failure weighs like a nightmare on Haiti. It has prevented a new mobilization. People, as they say in Creole, nous bouquet, we are exhausted. And that's a very real sentiment because whenever you had the hopes, and they were very high, things fell apart. And that really creates that kind of disengagement from, politics. We had a moment during the presidency of Jovenel Moïse of mobilization that looked like it was going to change the country again, but it fell apart. And then we had the assassination of Jovenel Moïse, and then crisis after crisis. So this is why I think that people are disengaged. There is a sense of exhaustion, a sense that the promises of the past have not materialized. How do you reenact, if you wish, a new sense of mobilization is one of the key questions facing Haiti. Now, to stop and to end on a more optimistic note, and I say that all the time when I'm concluding, is that history is not predetermined, and in particular, the history of Haiti. If you were a slave in the early 1800, and you were told that you are going to defeat Napoleon's army, most
Okay.
people would say, you are completely mad. This is impossible. And it happened. So the impossible can happen, but one also has to be realistic about what can ultimately change the country. So we have to be realistic. If you want to call it pessimistic, that's okay. But there is a degree of optimism with which I will leave you with. So thank you again for this webinar. I think it was very useful, and I hope we can do it again.
Thank you so much. And we can go back to the latest qualifications, the World Cup on November 18. It was unbelievable for so many of us. And after 52 years, we always find a way to defy the odds, I would say. Thank you so much. Before calling Dr. Ojeda for the final word, I'd like to say thank you to and Haiti policy to no, first of all, because I'm gonna get fired. So the Latin America Center for Latin American and the Caribbean Studies at Indiana University. And okay, this is my home, my house for 2 years now. And secondly, to the Canadian Caribbean Institute, and also to Haiti Policy House. Wolf is here. And I'd like to include Electoral, like I said, and Professor Jacques Rousseau was so welcoming to support us to share the webinar and invite more people, and the team also on social media. We publish it today, and thank you so much. Now it's time. So give the mic to Dr. Ojeda for the final word. And thank you, me, Webster Cornell. Also happy to be here this evening.
Thank you so much. I learned so much from this conversation. I have many other questions, things to read. You know, being Colombian, I have everything to do with many things that you mentioned. So thank you again for this fantastic conversation. And I look forward to more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Remember to subscribe to IU Clark's newsletter. We have a lot of events coming up. Please subscribe to know what we are doing and also to know how to support the center. How we need so if you can bring some money to the center, that would be so very okay. Thank you. Au revoir. Bye bye. Thank you so much. Let's hope like election gonna be happening soon.
Yes. Thank you, Webster, for organizing this.
Bye bye.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.